Hey everybody, Brendan here. Welcome back to the final game of my second tournament back in tournament play. I say the word tournament so much, tournament. But yeah, anyways, so I am playing the final game. I am on +3. I won my first game, won my second, drew my third, and then won my fourth. And of course, this is game 5, the final one. How will I do? Let's find out. I'm playing with the black pieces against Tony. Let's jump into it. We see knight f3. I play d5, g3, and c5. So I'm just going for as much space as I can here. Bishop g2, knight c6. And they play c4, which kind of actually surprised me here. So I end up taking, I ended up playing knight f6. And my hope is actually to go now for some sort of structure with the Maroczy, which is the reverse Maroczy, which I had way back in 2018, and I'll put the card for that in the you can see it on the screen now to click on it if you would like to click on it. Let's continue though. So knight f6, c takes d, knight takes d, castles, and e5, which is just a reverse Maroczy position, where now I'm going to play some sort of bishop e6, f6, bishop e7, and then castle. And it's just a Maroczy, but it's with black instead of white. They played knight c3. I played bishop e6 to defend my knight. b3, bishop e7, bishop to b2, and f6. My opponent played rook c1. I played queen d7. Again, still going for the same idea. That's it, the Maroczy setup. You bring the rook to c8. You play some sort of b6 here. But my opponent played e3, which was quite early and made me think a little bit of how I should play the position. So I think castling is probably best and what I definitely should have done. But I was going a little crazy here for absolutely no reason. If I just castle, then maybe they play d4. We start taking things off. And they try to argue that my d pawn, let's just show it on the board actually, castles, d4 takes, and let's just say knight takes e3 or a d takes or something like this. We get a position like this. They're probably going to win back the d pawn, and they try to argue that the move f6 is very strange, which I think is a fair argument. So that's why I played knight d to b4 here. And they crashed through with d4 anyways, even though I thought I prevented the move. And I was really annoyed when I played the move because I had noticed, they could probably just play d4 anyways, which they probably should. And they do. And after takes, I ended up playing knight takes, trying to trade off a piece or two if I can, with the goal that if I do play knight takes d4, e takes d4, that at least more pieces are trade off when I'm up a pawn. Hopefully that means something. They play knight e4. I play rook d8. Maybe I should have considered a move like castles though, honestly, because of their next move. But no, I played rook d8, so they couldn't take the pawn. And then they played a3, knight c6. Oh, sorry, no. Actually, after rook d8, instead maybe taking on a2 is actually really smart, because if they go into this variation of queen takes d4 takes something like this, I can look at taking on b3 here, and this could be good for me, because first off, if everything just comes off, then it's just an equal position, but it's their job to try to take everything off, so that would be happy moment for me. Okay, so yeah, I played rook d8, a3, knight back, and I thought I was happy because b3 is hanging in a lot of lines, but they played knight c5, which really surprised me because I was thinking, okay, I'll take it, and then rook takes, and then I'll castle, and am I unhappy there? It doesn't feel like it. b3 is a weakness. If they take on c6, I'm never really concerned. Because even though they get their pawn back, they also weaken their light squares around their king. But they don't play rook takes c5. They play queen h5 check. And now it's a little bit different because they're not taking with the rook, they're taking with the queen. And also, it's a little bit awkward for me to try to castle. Because if I play bishop f7, they can play a move like queen takes c5 and rook e1's coming. That's annoying. If I move my king, then my king can't castle, which is also really annoying. But I decided with king f8 instead of bishop f7, which might have objectively or bishop f7 might have objectively been slightly better or been a better choice. I thought that this was more interesting because after queen takes c5, I play king f7, and I'm trying to argue, okay, you know what? I'll play this position with my king on f7. My pieces will get into the game anyways, and I'll manually castle. I'm still up a pawn. Yippee, hooray, all that stuff. Also, something like this is not too much of a worry still, because I can play either rook d7 or bishop takes on b3 here. Both moves kind of make full sense to me. But that didn't happen. They played rook fd1, going for the d pawn. I took on b3, trying to get them to make up their mind on if they're going to take on c6 or not. And they ended up taking, and then taking on d4. And I was quite happy here, because now after bishop d5, I am up a pawn, and I have compensation, in my opinion, because their light squares are weaker than my dark squares. I'm covering dark squares with my constellation of pawns. It's not really constellation if it's just 2 pawns, but my pawns kind of break their bishop a little bit with f6 and g7, though there are still potential attacks to be had, which we'll see in the game actually. But I was not really that upset because, for example, if I can just play like queen h3, queen g2 is just really hard to stop, and they might have to sacrifice an exchange to do that, which would not be good for them at all. But here they played rook a4, so they end up actually getting the a pawn back. I could play rook a8, and that's probably best, but then moves like bishop d4 could come, and it feels really hard to add any more defenders, unless I play a move like a6. Then if I play a6, maybe they play rook b1, and then they try to get in on the b file. Feels pretty equal, because they get a lot of activity, and they're, well, it's opposite color bishops, so they just go in on the dark squares. And if they can get something to the 7th rank, that's a little scary. So I just let them get to the 7th rank. I played queen f5. Simple threat, queen f3 just wins the game. So they took on a7 with check, king g6, and queen e3, which prevents me from being able to play queen f3 or queen e4. I play rook he8, getting my last piece into the game. Queen to f4, and it took me a little bit of time here to think because I really wanted to play queen h3, which is really tempting. For example, if f3 here, there's the move rook to e2 to consider, which actually just wins the game. But of course, after queen h3, they don't do this. They play something stronger, and it took me a minute to realize what their idea was. If queen h3, there's rook takes g7, and that's an ambulance moment. We're calling an ambulance, but not for them, for ourselves, because queen takes f6 and mate. That would be a very sad way to end the game. So I ended up taking on f4 here, and I'm just trying to argue that my rooks are gonna somehow be better than their rooks, and also that my structure is better. That part is true, and also that my bishop is better, which arguably can be true, but also now these pawns feel a little bit weaker than stronger, so that's not even confirmed. I played rook g8 here to allow my king to get to f5, and then I can play some sort of like h5 and g6 to defend everything. My opponent played bishop d4, I played rook a8, trying to trade off the rook here. They played rook a1. I played king f5, and now they finally took. And I think if they just play something like a4, followed by maybe even a5 after, and then put the bishop on b6, it's just a draw. Like, I don't really see how to make a lot of progress even if I win the pawn. But they go a little too defensive here with the move bishop to e3. And after the move rook a4, I'm not really getting enough, obviously. It's clearly not enough here. There's no breakthrough. There's no way for me to improve my pieces too much more than this. But it's something. Their pawn's blockaded on a3. If they move away and I can take a3, now I have something to fight for, which is the promotion of my c-pawn, or something mixed with that and checkmate against their king, which is definitely inactive. But after rook a4, I was just looking at h3, preventing king g4, and I saw nothing at all to get in. But they didn't do that. They played king f1, which I think makes their life a little bit harder. I was looking at king g4 or bishop to f3. I ended up going with bishop to f3 and allowing h3. I decided maybe I should do this to see if I can get some sort of, like, you know, get my king in, because it feels like they still have to waste time with this move. But they didn't want to waste this time, and I think that helped me in the long run, because they played king e1 instead, trying to go to the center of the board, which I think, funnily enough, is the wrong strategy. If they sit and wait here, and again play h3, and then they just like shuffle, I don't see how I make progress. c5 is too well defended. If I ever try to get behind it, the a-pawn just runs. So there's nothing here for me. So yeah, king e1, and now king g4 comes, and this pawn is very hard to defend. They have to play into this variation where it feels like something has definitely gone wrong. Now I can consider moves like g5 here, going for offense. Again, this is kind of a cute little trick. The whole point is rook g4 check would be not a fun way to end the game for them. But yeah, so going all like defensive like that is very hard to do. So my opponent ended up not doing that. They played king to d2. But now I play king h3, and this pawn is not defendable. If they ever play a move like rook to g1, there were some moves I was considering, like g6, but ultimately I had decided I was going to play, let's just say rook g1. I can take the pawn, but I thought bishop g2 was even stronger, where now I'm threatening to take the pawn still, and I'm also threatening the move king takes h2, followed by h5, h4, h3, bishop back to f3, king to g2, and then promote. But they didn't do that. They played king c3, and then I played bishop to d5. And this was aimed towards preventing king b3, simple as that, where this pawn is going to be won. There's nothing that can be done about it. My h-pawn is also going to run, and it's getting harder and harder for them to defend their position because of that. They played bishop c5 here, and now the game is just over. I did have a significant idea of king takes h2 and the h-pawn running, which was pretty hard to stop already. But bishop c5, there's a tactic here, black to move and win, which does finish the game. Rook c4 check attacks the king and the bishop. King d3 I took, and even if a4 I can just defend by rook a5. But now I'm up a bishop as well. I'm still going for the same plan of taking the h-pawn and running my own, which will win the game. But they continue playing for a little bit longer. King e3, rook a5, f3, rook a4. I wasn't in any rush to take the h-pawn. f5, h5, king e2, h4, king e3, king takes h2, king e2, king g2 now, king e3, h3, rook b1, rook takes a3 with check, king d4, and rook takes f3. And my opponent resigned here. Because now, after rook takes f3, the reason I played this instead of pushing is because if I were to push before, maybe they just keep giving me checks, which is annoying. But now, if they give me a check of some sort, I just block it, and the pawn just will promote. And funnily enough, there's no rook b7 in these positions because c5 check is a move to consider, which is also a bad move because of king takes d5. I don't know why. I didn't even realize that at first there. I got to get my eyes checked or something, but this position is completely winning anyways. My bad. Don't worry about before, but this is the way to win it. But of course, yeah, my opponent actually just resigned after rook takes f3. And I ended up on +4 in a 5-round tournament. I only drew 1 game. The other 4 were wins. I gained like 150 rating points, Canadian rating from this tournament, which was great. I think I had almost a 2100 performance. It would have been a bit higher if I had won the game that I drew instead. But you can't really complain if you gain that much rating and have such a good performance. And that is my second tournament back. Now I am, I believe 1908 is my new rating. It was something in the 1750s at this point. So I completely jumped over 1800, which is something that not a lot of people get to say. But yeah, and that's the game. I will see you in the next tournament. Bye-bye.